What's going on, people? Happy Thanksgiving. We're coming to you live from the Talkin TV channel to give you a Thanksgiving special live event. We're recapping Succession Season 3, Episode 6, entitled What It Takes. This was an interesting episode, Dustin. You got any preliminary thoughts before we get this started?
Not really. I just want to say happy Thanksgiving and thanks for tuning in.
Absolutely. All that and more. Stay tuned. All right, Dustin. So we're at an interesting point in the season right now. We're past the halfway point. The sides have seemingly kind of shifted as far as who's on top, right? You had this really interesting push-pull back and forth between who was on top and who wasn't, right? There didn't seem to be really any sort of emphasis on who was going to win per se. And now at this point in the season, the crazy part is that we're already 2/3 of the way done with the season. We've only got 3 episodes left after this. It's still kind of baffling to me that we've made it this far and that it's gone by this quickly. But I don't know, man. It definitely seemed like from the beginning, Kendall does not seem to be in the best position after last week of the shareholder meeting.
No, he's not, but he still has that cockiness to him. We see him after kind of choking in that important meeting that he had with the government in front of his lawyer, played by Sanaa Lathan, who we were introduced to in the beginning of the season. And we learned pretty quickly that she's not agreeing with him and he's not fucking with that. So he cans her pretty much, right? He's just like,
Yep.
Lisa's gone. So yeah, we're still not sure how much advantages he still has, but he still has cockiness. And next week's episode, we got a little tease of that where it's going to be his 40th birthday. And I'm really hoping that brings us back to the Prague season 1, which was one of my favorite. That was the episode, right, where they went to the bachelor party.
Yes.
Which was I can't wait for that, another kind of episode like that. And we're gonna get introduced to Alexander Skarsgård. So there's so
Directed
much
by Lorena Scafaria too.
Oh, that's gonna be the best. That's gonna be the best of the season. I'm just calling it.
I cannot wait for next week's episode and kind of the beginning of the last act of this season that we've been in. But I think the interesting thing, right, is the fact that again, Kendall from the beginning of this season was in this really weird spot where again, it's he seemed like he came out on top after the gang drop at the end of season 2. But at the same time, just based on Jeremy Strong's performance and just based on Kendall's mannerisms, it seemed like there was something that wasn't quite adding up, both between just how cocky he was being, just how high on life he seemed to be being. It almost felt like it was too good to be true. And the thing that seems to be established by this episode is that it was, where I had a sneaking suspicion. I talked about this a couple episodes ago. I don't remember which episode it was, but I had a sneaking suspicion that there wasn't exactly going to be enough in those documents in order to really do any damage towards the company and really give him the leverage that he was kind of hoping for. And now you're seeing Kendall in just the absolute worst position that he could possibly be in, which is where, okay, not only now do I know that I'm in a position that I'm in a worse off position because I don't have the leverage that I thought I did, but now people are telling me what I don't want to hear. And so he's kind of getting back into that rich boy mindset of, oh, if I don't hear what I want, then they're gone. Then they're gone. And he's been hearing all this feedback from from this army of yes men, right? And I think that's kind of provided the biggest difference ultimately between him and Logan. Is at the very least, I feel like the interesting thing about Logan this season is that this season more than ever is a season of people actually telling Logan what he needs to hear, as opposed to him just being surrounded by an army of yes men and everyone doing the usual Succession thing of just talking around and talking in circles around what Logan wants to hear. But again, after Logan's miraculously recovered, can we just talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Is this man God? I'm completely convinced this man is God, after this point, because he recovered from a UTI where he was literally losing his marbles, as they said last week, piss mad.
For now.
And now they're in a position of they're picking the next president of the United States, and he seems to have all of his functions back. The show and its back and forth with Logan's health is continuing to be the most irritating part for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely most. I agree with you there, and Yeah, the whole thing with picking the president, that's what really drove this episode, and we get, like, a plethora of, like, extended cameos by people like Reed Birney
Yep.
and, my boy Reed Birney, Bernie Beg, and that's my Bernie, not Bernie Sanders, Reed Birney. Baby. But yeah, but and of course we get Justin Kirk, who's going to
Right.
be a very important character, assuming from going by this episode, what happens in it. And I love Justin Kirk. He was the best thing about Weeds. So yeah, I'm all and the character he's playing too, this extreme like alt right, maybe Nazi, as Shiv pointed out, like that, like I just loved his chemistry with Kieran Culkin's character, and I just can't wait to see what he does next on this show as well.
So
Especially since
that's
he could be president.
Oh man,
That'd be
imagine Justin
wild.
Kirk's character is gonna be wild. But I wanted to talk about that for a second because, like I said, this
Yeah.
show has constantly done this really interesting back and forth where they kind of dance around not having direct connections to reality, but there are just enough illusions there where if you want to think that it's based off of a real life figure, you can, sure. And that obviously goes back to the inception of the show and where all these characters in this family is loosely based off the Murdochs, where again, Kendall's supposed to be James Murdoch. And I don't know. Is Justin Kirk's character supposed to be mimicking a real life figure, or is he more so like an amalgamation of all these different types of political figures that we've been seeing in the news these last couple of years? Because I feel like
Yeah.
it could be either or.
I think well, it could be, but I think it's, like, definitely an amalgam of people that I think of right now, like, off the top of my head. I can think of one guy, like that Getz guy. What's that guy? Matt Getz or something? That guy with
Yeah,
the weird teeth and, like, the weird hair. Kinda looks like
yeah.
a roided out Colin Jost.
Is that the Yul Vasquez character?
No, it's like the Justin Kirk character, I feel like, was, like, sort of like an amalgam of all these weird alt-right, like, fucking crazy guys that have, like, allegations against him. Like, that's the sort of shit, like, that was reminding me of, was, like, that Getz guy, like, the Justin Kirk character, but I could be wrong. But Yul
Right,
Vasquez was more like the conservative, like, Latino, like, candidate,
right.
and that's another actor I really like a lot. He was great in Last Flag Flying. Like, he's a really good character actor, that guy, and
Yeah,
I was kinda rooting for him too in this episode, especially, like, he has, like, a thing going with Shiv, and I really liked, like, his progressive point of view that he was telling Shiv about, and, like, to see that really not pan out well in the end for
right.
Shiv or him, like, that was kinda disappointing, but not disappointing. It's, like, disappointing in the sense of, like, I like when good things happen, but, like, in the terms of this show, like, no, the characters be doing what they be doing, and it's unscrupulous.
Yeah. So the whole big thing here is that Logan specifically and the Roys, and kind of their whole thing right now is they are looking for somebody to quote unquote replace the raisin, as they said about the previous sitting president. And they are looking for somebody to tamper the DOJ. So even though it seems like Logan is on the winning side now after last week's just disaster of a shareholders conference, they're still not quite out of hot water yet, right? The whole thing is that the president kind of showed like, yeah, this pressure between kind of Waystar constantly getting to me because I won't immediately do Logan's bidding, and also more than likely because he's got some sort of mental problems, caused him to step down. So their whole thing, right? Argument to be made that we've never seen the Roys in a more powerful position than they are, where like these guys are literally deciding like the future of the free world itself. And that already opens up so many different doors about just like the control that the 1% truly do have. And like, we know that the show's a satire as well, but like,
Yeah.
is this super different than what we would see? Obviously, because again, like the whole thing is they hold that power in their hands because of the amount of vast, kind of reaching people Waystar has with its TV, with its news stations. Like, there's a reason why Logan was so adamant about going after those local news stations in season 1, because he knows that there are still a lot of people that watch that stuff like religiously. It's not all kind of streaming and new age tech the way that Kendall would like to envision it.
Mhm.
There's a lot at stake here, as far as like what kind of happens. And I love how to, again, just like I think the argument you made, this might be like my favorite of Logan this entire season, because for me, Logan is at his best when he is kind of just letting everyone ramble off in front of him, just kind of rattle off their thoughts, get into their micro arguments, get into their usual bullshit. And while he just kind of sits back as the chess master and kind of makes his decision based off of like everyone's disagreements. That to me is when Logan is at his best and at his strongest. And
Mhm.
that was on full display here. And kind of like how like he pick and chose the moments and the different like kind of methods with which to draw in the different presidential cabinets. So if we break it down, right, we have obviously the Reed Birney character, who's the current sitting vice president, Dave Boyer. You have obviously the more kind of conservative leaning, but not quite like psychopathic, like more progressive character with Yul Vasquez's Rick Salgado. And then you have the right wing nut, potentially Nazi ties, potentially mentally unstable character Jared Mencken with portrayed by Justin Kirk. And of course, the interesting thing here is that after Shiv's kind of, victory last episode, that was like immediately shot down by her dad, because that's just how Logan operates, right? The minute that you start to get just like a little bit of agency and a little bit of actual power, he squashes you. He steps on you because he's like, no, because you can never have more power than Logan Roy. And so Shiv,
you never have that confidence, otherwise he'll squash it, and he doesn't want you to ever feel content. Like, he just wants you to be under his grip.
Yeah, pretty
much.
Needs
to be stopped. Cancel Logan Roy.
Okay. I'm surprised that hasn't become a subplot yet.
Yeah, right.
The cancel Logan Roy, the cancel Kendall Roy, that phrase. I'm surprised.
Yeah,
well, I mean, the morning show, the finale literally had a whole thing about Jennifer Aniston ranting about cancel culture.
No, don't even get me fucking started.
And then she's got COVID. Like, dude, the morning show, the minute that Carell literally drove off the cliff, I'm like, okay, fuck this show.
This show. But actually, it did before that. But like, still,
at that moment,
down.
Oh man. But we're not here to talk about the morning show.
Sorry for even bringing that up.
I don't know why we keep bringing that up. But
oh god,
yeah.
No one's even Emmy worthy. Like, Billy Crudup isn't even Emmy worthy on it this year. But Aniston really just is.
But you know what the whole thing about that show is? It's a show, specifically this season. It's a show that's got all these little interesting, like surprisingly well acted moments. But because of like the very obvious behind the scenes disruption because of COVID and just the absolute ludicrous nature that they take with kind of making the plot semantics work, it just and not to mention the fact that the show has no idea how to actually be relevant towards real life, even though that's seeming to be what it's trying to do. Like, it's in such stark contrast to shows like this, which again, like we talked about this before, the brilliance of Succession is the fact that it is escape, that it is about the real world, but it's also escapist to the point where, again, you could choose to think that this is like about the real world, but if not, you could still be enraptured by these characters enough to really kind of forget that you're watching in order to kind of like forget that you're watching something with allegorical ties to real life. And so Stacy in the chat brought up episode wasn't one of my favorites of the show, but still dramatic and full of intrigue, as is every Succession episode. I agree. It's not one of my favorites of the season, but it's definitely still up there as far as kind of the tonality.
It has some of the best moments on this season, I would say, though. Like, specifically the moment where Kendall calls Tom and Tom and Kendall fucking meet up in the diner.
Let's break down that scene, because that scene is easily, for me, the standout scene of the entire friggin' episode. Like, I mean, Tom at this point is pretty much like kind of resigned himself to jail. And like, I love how like this season, right? We didn't think that Matthew McFadden's performance could get much better than that season 2 finale, but like the way that he's been slowly unraveling just with his interactions with Shiv and Greg. And now that like, especially last episode where friggin' he revealed that he's tracking Shiv's cycle so that he could like,
I know.
Wild stuff. Just
that was fucking hilarious. No, but how about, let's just talk about, before we get into that scene, let's talk about how quickly that Tom proposal to go to the jail, like how quickly that fucking went from like, no, don't be silly, Tom, to like, oh no, he's going to jail now. Like, how quick did that fucking happen, bro?
Yeah, really
like, that was fucking insane. Like, that was like 2-3 episodes, baby.
I'm like, I know that this show, obviously, again, it doesn't have like the best relationship with time, right? There'll be like a potential like months that happen in between, so months or weeks that happen in between episodes. But like the way that it's playing around, where it's like, dude, you still have to like be investigated and like be tried first and found guilty before you're sent to jail. At least that's how I think it goes. You know, we all know like the court of public. We all know that the justice system really doesn't apply in the traditionalist sense to the 1%ers. But I don't know, like what is Kendall's fascination with Tom here? Of all the people, is it just the fact that he's exhausted all of his options? The fact that he's realizing now that Greg is kind of not useless, but kind of like a loose end that he knows that kind of like is expendable? Like, is that it? But like, why Tom specifically? What is it that Tom has that Kendall thinks, like, is Kendall just grasping for allies here? Like, what's your thought process on that?
He might be grasping for allies, but like whenever he mentions that he likes him, like I really think he does, because like even in season 1, like like I keep bringing this up. I brought this
Team
up
Kendall.
last episode. Like the Team Kendall moment, like with him and Tom. Like I thought they were friends. I thought they were buddy before that car crash bullshit. And then season 2, like in that whole like who's gonna take the fall, and like then we're in season 3, and now I and going back to that moment earlier in this season when we see him in the office in like episode 3, was it? Yeah, which was a great episode. Maybe my favorite of the season so far. But that was also one of my favorite scenes of that episode, where he's just like, there's still a moment, a spot for you over here, and the fact that he's persisting it, like I think he wants Tom, and he knows that Tom is just on a sinking ship, and he just wants to save him because he just feels bad for him, maybe, or maybe I'm just completely manipulated by Kendall at this point as an audience member, but I don't know. I just think there's something interesting there. And then the way Tom breaks it down, and he's just like, yeah, I would come to you, but your father's never been fucked. I've seen you fuck constantly, which you've been bringing up every episode.
I have been. And I love that interaction. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that to me was like the dialogue of the episode. Because you notice that Kendall has nothing to say after that. Because again, like it's funny you mentioned that, like Kendall is like trying to quote unquote save Tom from the sinking ship, but I almost feel like it's the opposite, where at this point Kendall is on the sinking ship and he's just kind of like trying to grasp at like any potential straw ally he can get, and so he's tries in denial. To Tom, he's very much in denial. Like this is probably the most in denial that we've seen Kendall, and I think it's all going to culminate like crazily big in next episode, where I'm hoping for another rap scene. We have been deprived too long.
Oh, dude, it hinted at it with him with the microphone. I can't wait. I cannot wait. And Jeremy Strong even said in an interview that you never know.
That's true.
Like that could happen.
That's true.
He didn't say no.
What do you think he's going to rap? Again, he's definitely not doing another rendition of L to the OG. That was last season, Kendall. But no, you think he's going to go full on Beastie Boys? You think we're going to get some like original tunes of his? Like, what do you think?
I think we're going to get something new. Obviously, something new. Right. And I think it's going to be fucking fire. If DJ Squiggles on the beat, dude,
Squiggles on the deck, Candy on the rhymes.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. If Squiggles on the beat, then we're getting some fire, dude.
Yes, absolutely. But the thing about that whole Tom thing is it's so strange, because in a way, like the thing about Succession, right, and the way that it writes its dialogue is so much of the show is all about like kind of people like arguing and talking around each other and constantly talking around and around the point, right? So much of the show is all about people not telling these characters what they really need to hear because of how like kind of full of shit and how dishonest they are, and about how they're all trying to like just prop themselves up and prop their own careers up. But whenever somebody brings out the "you're fucked," right? And the problem is it almost lost a little bit of its meaning because Logan kind of overuses the phrase just a little bit, "you're fucked" or "fuck off." That's kind of like his go-to phrases, right? It kind of loses a little bit of his meaning when Logan says it. But whenever any other character says it, that's when you know that shit is serious and shit is actually real in a show that is almost completely about artifice, where Tom brings that up, and it's almost like he's channeling Logan in a sense, where so much of the enmity between Logan and Kendall comes from just how insecure Kendall is about the fact that his dad does not think that he has it in him, right? Versus Logan is all about kind of keeping Kendall down because in some strange way, he knows that Kendall would theoretically, at least in previous seasons, I don't necessarily know now, but in previous seasons, Kendall really was the only kid that he personally saw as being able to truly succeed him. And in that moment, it's almost like kind of like Tom, like bringing it back to reality and like kind of giving Kendall a much, much needed reality check, where it's like, Kendall, I want to believe you and I want to be with you, but you seem like a nice guy and you seem like you have good intentions, but you constantly either get fucked or fuck yourself over and over and over and over again. If it's not the latest will of God that's trying to hamper him, it's his own complete self-destruction. And he's like, and Logan, he literally watched the last episode. Logan, by the grace of God, has never, ever been fucked. He's always managed to outmaneuver his enemies. He's always managed to bring something up. Even when Logan is in a moment of crisis, he still feels like he's got at least one hand on the steering wheel, And so I can't,
unless he's fucking out of his mind.
Unless he's pissed mad and out of his mind, right? Which again, I personally think, again, Kendall, I think, needs to take a couple notes from that, because again,
dude, he really needs to pay attention to when he walked into that room and he's like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah. I still can't get over that. Like that. I mean, we don't get to see Jeremy Strong yell a lot on the show, but that moment, I'm not gonna lie. And Jeremy Strong was so good for those first 3 episodes, and like just completely, relocked us in and reminded us of just how fucking awesome Strong is in that performance. But this but what's it called? But this episode, and rather last episode in particular, it might be my favorite bit of acting from Strong.
Yeah.
Close to it. I mean, season 2, I don't necessarily know if anything's ever going to top his season 2 performance and like kind of what he had to bring to that season. But that moment where he's yelling at everyone in the last episode, it's like that shit. Like, I'm like, oh man, that's intense, especially because it's like, that's the one instance where Kendall is kind of on their side again, where he's like, he kind of fucks it up by saying, oh, you're ruining everything that I've worked for. But at the same time, he's also like, you know, he's like, you think they're bluffing, they're not bluffing. If you idiots continue to do this, you are going to lose the company, you know? And that was like the one instance where, again, it wasn't his ego talking. It wasn't his, what's it called? It wasn't his like kind of mania talking. It was just like logical common sense that reminds us, okay, Kendall, if not for the fact that his dad fucking hates the idea of anybody stepping to him in some way, shape, or form, like Kendall would be the logical choice to succeed, you know?
No, I just think it's frustrating because like, even that scene is great, and like he really shows his potential to be like the next Logan. But like no one wants to listen to that because he isn't in that position yet.
Right.
And no one will ever take him serious. That's why no one ever takes anybody seriously when they want to overthrow Brian Cox's character. No, that's the whole conflict of the show. And sooner or later someone needs to stop someone, okay?
So that was going to be my next question. Yeah. Is what do you think Kendall's going to have to do for people to take him seriously? Like, because at this point, like, because the whole thing, right, is that at the end of season 2, you really thought it's like, okay, now he's in a position, he's finally going to be going head to head. And this season, it feels like it's done nothing but pull it back and show, oh no, Kendall now is just an egomaniacal, mania-fueled whack job who, again, like, has brief moments of, who has brief moments of clarity and brief moments of kind of like, foresight as far as what to do best for the company. But I don't know, like, I think the brilliant thing that this show has done kind of throughout the entirety of its run, not just with this season, is showed that kind of like, it's very strange because I don't think I've ever seen any other show do this before, where season 1, Kendall is arguably at the top of his game. He's set to inherit it, right? But the fact that he almost dares to fucking like kind of question Logan's health and ability to run things on top of the fact that he makes some really stupid decisions in that first episode, it almost kind of like it almost kind of jeopardizes him and sets him off on this path to what's called towards self-destruction in a way, which obviously is mostly spurred by Logan. But like, I don't know, like at what point, because we talked about this a lot, right? You and I have both talked about the fact that we don't think that Logan is making it out alive of this season. What is it going to take? What is it going to take for Kendall to be taken seriously? Like, does he literally have to kill Logan, as Roman made a joke about in episode 4? Like, do you have a thing for almost killing Dad, but then pulling out at the last minute? Like, what is it going to take for people to not only take Kendall seriously, and is it a doomed effort? Because we saw this again. It's really strange, kind of, but again, how all these HBO shows kind of tie together in Game of Thrones, right? In season 2, with
I don't know if he's going to literally kill his father. I don't know how he'll get away with that, honestly. But like,
well, from a metaphorical sense, but it's like, I literally don't know what else he can do, because I feel
metaphorical sense.
Right, because I feel like all other options have been exhausted, you know?
Oh, he's gonna have to, like, I feel like in order to expose his father, he's gonna have to expose himself more.
Right, which is something that he's refusing to do.
And that's like his biggest struggle. But if he does that, and he might end up whatever that word is, do that in the next episode, whether through a drunken or coked up rage or whatever, like some shit's gonna be unearthed next episode, and if it isn't, that'll be disappointing.
Oh man, do we see? I know you've been talking about how much you fucking hate that they are constantly alluding to it, but is this the moment where we get the revelation of the kid? Is this where that comes back? Feeling if there was ever a moment for them to do it, and just, if nothing else, just get that out of the way, because they keep fucking bringing it up. They have been hinting at it way too much this season for them to not do anything with it. Next episode or the next couple episodes.
Well, when else have they like hinted at it since like episode 3 or 4? Like, when was really the last time they've referenced it?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is in episodes 3 and 4, and the fact that they brought that back, and it's like they're hinting at this way too much.
Well, he would have to. Well, that's a good point then, if you bring that up, but that would also be kind of meaningless, because then wouldn't that mean he would go to jail if he exposes himself for killing, but like accidentally like manslaughtering a kid, even though he didn't turn the wheel and the kid killed himself? Anyway, Brian Cox, he covered up the fucking crime. that's even worse.
Right.
So like they'd have to, like he would have to take down himself like that in order to take his father down. Otherwise, Brian Cox is going to have like a fucking, miscellaneous awful thing happen to him with his health, and then he dies tragically.
Right.
And then Kendall can fucking maneuver his way a different way.
Right.
But like, and we don't even need to worry about the fucking cover up of bullshit. And like, what is the bodyguard going to fucking say after that? Who knows? He's probably going to work for Kendall then. Like, who knows? Who fucking knows, dude? That's the best case scenario. Other than that, this show could pull something out of its ass eloquently, as it usually does, and give me a great conclusion to that. And it could be neither of those options that I just said. So, it's whatever.
The whole thing is that, just as far as the whole Logan of it goes, it's that it feels like they've been dropping too many hints that he's going to die, right? Between Brian Cox jokingly saying, oh, they could kill me, but they'd miss me too much, Like, and it's funny because there was an early prediction that I made about the rest of the show after season 2 ended, which is when kind of Jesse Armstrong unveiled that he only wanted to do like 4 or 5 seasons, which is, I'm like, yeah, I could very much see a case where Logan dies, Kendall does take over the top spot, and then like ends up kind of becoming the new Logan in a sense, which in a strange way, it seems like the natural conclusion of his arc because of all the kids, right? They've all got pieces of it, but Kendall, it feels like, again, like the killer instinct is the only thing that he's missing. And if he unlocks that, game over.
Yeah, and I do think he has the most potential out of all the kids just because, like, last week we go from fucking Sarah Snook saving the day, not getting credit, and then Kieran Culkin gets credit this fucking episode after botching the fucking call with the president last episode, even though I thought he did an okay enough job, but it didn't live up to the standards to everybody else in the room and the president, I guess. So, and then at the end of this episode, after, Kieran Culkin makes a good enough argument for Justin Kirk's character to be president potentially, or the Republican nominee at the very least, like that's when Logan goes up to him and be like, good job, boy. Good job, my boy. And it's
we always know to beware of those good job, my boys, because it always seems to be just turning into the, fuck off afterwards, or like, oh, you're nothing.
But what does that say about Logan's like sense of like a businessman, like a good businessman? Like, you're giving your trust to a guy that blew up a fucking satellite, like a rocket ship, and he
still makes me laugh.
And the thing that's crazy, like, there's so much shit that we don't know about him in the fucking movie industry with him and his brother that he probably did horrid shit to.
Right.
If that's any indication of the first episode that we're even fucking introduced to the guy in pilot when he did that awful thing to that little kid. Oh. So it's like, he's made way more mistakes than Kendall. He's done way worse things than Kendall, and he's had less experience than Kendall. But yet this show still wants me to take him seriously and feel a little bit more empathetic towards him. And in a way I do, but I still don't want him to take over, because I think that even though he's a very smart guy, and he's smarter than everybody, thinks he is. But like, if he was in control, I think it would be scarier than Kendall. Because because the show has hinted a lot at the fact that he's maybe one of the most conservative people on the show, and he doesn't really give a shit about poor people in the slightest, or minorities for that matter.
Right.
So it's like, maybe Logan sees himself more in Roman the more Kendall is gone. And that's what's kind of scaring me. And I think the show's been kind of hinting at that. And I think Logan is blindly just wanting to like trust his son, because he sees a lot of himself in him just through like the fucking shitty decisions he's been making. But like, I don't know, maybe I'm totally off, but like, that's what I've been getting.
No, I think you're dead on. And we've talked about this again, how you seem to be like just dead on about these random things, which is that it definitely seems like, because the whole thing with Roman this entire season is, it definitely the thing that seems to be established here is that Roman is really the only one of the main 3 that doesn't seem to want the top spot. And I think that that's been kind of more so hammered home in the last couple of episodes as well, which is that Shiv obviously has her goals, right? Kendall obviously has his goals. Connor even seems to be making a play for the seat for the first time ever, although that
we forgot all about Connor.
We forgot all about, don't worry, I'm saving him.
The presidential
candidate. Don't worry, I'm saving that. I'm saving that. Just again, this show's continued use of Alan Ruck as the joke character, but Alan Ruck is just so fucking good that he manages to turn every single line into a gem, even though he very much is the joke character. And quick question though, do you think that they're trying to make Connor self-aware about the fact that he's a joke?
Yeah, but he's trying to take himself more seriously in spite of that, and I still think, like, that performance is getting better and better.
Yeah, absolutely. But the whole thing about Roman, and it's a big reason why Roman ultimately sided with Logan back in episode 2, is that he, at the end of the day, does not want any. And it's, again, it's constantly the thing that has been brought up with Roman time and time again. It's that Roman, way more so than Kendall, just does not have the stones to go against the dad. Not only that, but he almost, in a strange way, does still feel some form of like genuine love and need for validation from Logan. And he's still and he, I think, more so than any of the other siblings, is really the only one that I still think he could get it. And with everything that's been happening with him in these last couple episodes, between the conversation with the president, between him courting Justin Kirk, and him seeming to be like the most successful, between, obviously, we know that he's going to be the one that runs point with Alexander Skarsgård in the next couple episodes.
Yep.
Like, it definitely, like, it seems like the Roman stuff that was hinted at for the beginning of this season was very, very underplayed, but it seems to be like mounting up, where you're 100% right. I think that from a practical business sense, Roman would be an absolute disaster of a choice, but within kind of the context of the show, right? Where Logan, where Kendall's completely on the outs. Logan is starting to think that Shiv is becoming a little bit too ambitious and a little bit too much of a threat, despite the fact that she seems to be single-handedly keeping everything afloat. And so as a result, he knows more than anyone else that Connor cannot be taken seriously. So who does that leave him with? Roman. So that's just a process of elimination thing there. Plus, we also can never really take Logan for granted, because we never know if Logan's just going to fucking have like a mental breakdown and like start freaking out on everyone the way that he did last episode.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it definitely it's very interesting kind of how they're playing around the whole Logan-Roman relationship, because Roman has been a character who you almost don't take seriously, and he's constantly like just a funny supporting character until he pulls out a surprise move, until he does the whole thing in the finale of season 2 where he's like, oh yeah, there's this whole deal with the Arabs. It's a complete pipe dream. They have nothing, you know?
Yeah.
Or when he has the moment, obviously, with Justin Kirk, where he's like, yeah, this guy's an absolute loon, but he could be exactly what we need, you know? Personally, I think that of all the decisions, that could be the one that backfires in his face, because I personally think that if they think they can keep Justin Kirk on a leash and have them do his bidding, I think they're even more insane and delusional than we already thought
what I mean.
were.
That's
because
exactly
if
what I
they
mean.
think that Justin Kirk is going to be kind of like the puppet that they want him to be, big fucking mistake on all their parts.
That's more that just makes them hypocrites, because like, if they're worried about Kendall, why the fuck are they worried about a potential Nazi? You know what I mean?
Not to mention a clearly mentally unstable. I don't think there's been any other character on the show so far that has been so obviously mentally unstable as Justin Kirk's character is. Like, the dude is like having spaz fits in general. And the other thing too also is how that reflects on Shiv, where Shiv, this season more so than anything else, is like, they're really, I think, doing an interesting kind of examine. And why I think this season personally for me is Shiv's best season, is where they're finally like having like kind of Shiv, right, be and start to understand like the toxic masculine culture that goes into these sorts of things. Where the first 2 seasons, right, she was completely on the outside, right, with the political thing, and then season 2 she's slowly brought in and then kind of manipulated by Logan. But this season in particular, she's really on the inside, and like between everything that was happening with episode 4, with everyone kind of talking down to her and not taking her seriously, and then obviously what happens in the last episode with, you know, Sandy kind of gives her almost this false sense of hope, where she's like, oh yeah, I'm finally gonna get my daddy's approval, and then afterwards he just, you know, shoots her down. And now you have this episode where she's like, wow, so Justin Kirk is making all of these cracks about her. And it's to the point where it's making her uncomfortable. And it's to the point where, like, I don't know, like, where do you think that goes with Shiv, as far as like kind of, because there's always this interesting thing that you see when you have women of that high up in these types of environments, and they almost seem to be like aloof of like kind of like the struggles that women have to deal with in this type of the workplace until it happens to them. And I feel like Shiv, that moment is happening for her now.
Yeah, because she's not getting her way, and she was going to make a deal. It's all for her own benefit, because the only reason why she wanted the fucking Yul Vasquez character is so she could eventually slip her way into the CEO or the head of the company. Like, that's the only because Yul Vasquez said like he didn't care for the dad, right?
Right.
That he didn't care for the dad.
Yeah,
so
he
like
didn't care about Logan.
So like he was really just on her side. So it's like, yeah, it's like she's only playing for herself. But like, I feel like, to answer your question, I think this could, Logan's involvement with Justin Kirk's character is going to make her go more towards Kendall, I feel like. I just and I think in proxy that's going to bring Tom more towards that way. And I think Tom and the way Tom was and I feel like the camera did this on purpose, and the director who's also directed a lot of the best episodes of this show.
Right, like, which one is this? Andriy Parek did
this
one?
Yeah, like he's great, and he pointed the camera at Tom at the scene where she was forced into like the and after like Brian Cox made the decision, like the scene before that, but like you see Tom's reaction, you can kind of see that like Tom might be having an idea in his head to maybe convince her to go to Kendall and maybe slide that way, and then by having her in there, she could expose shit for Kendall to help him get the top spot. That's my theory.
Interesting.
Who knows?
Very interesting. That might be, of all the theories that have been brought up about where the rest of this season is going to go, I think that one might be my favorite, and also probably, I don't know, that seems pretty accurate, because it seems to have been hinting, right? Shiv has constantly been in this push-pull back and forth between Kendall and Logan, right? But we know that she's completely self-interested, and she's only in it for like kind of getting something for herself, right? That's what led to the whole Hope Davis moment in the last episode. But just again, with kind of like how she keeps bringing it up, he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I saved the company, and Logan's like, oh, get a medal for Shiv. The way that he's just constantly, back talking her and not taking her seriously and all that. But I want to talk about Greg for a second, because what are they doing with him? What are they doing with him? I'm at a loss.
They're dropping the ball on him, honestly.
Because for somebody who was slated as the writer's favorite character for the first 2 seasons, it is, to me, just tragic what they're doing with him. Where you had finally seemingly an interesting development of him constantly like having this weird push-pull back forth, not really know what side he's going to be on, right? With his grandpa pulling his inheritance after rightfully so feeling pissed that Greg was just seemingly jerking them around. And then obviously, the whole joke at the end about him suing Greenpeace. And then the only bit in this is that, wow, so he attracts a bunch of conservative radicals because he's going to sue Greenpeace, and they think that that's funny. And that's about it. And then also the bit where it's like he texts Kendall and he's like, oh, are you still going to burn me? And it's like, dude, I'm like, are you actually stupid? Like, and that's the thing that sucks, is that Greg, up until this point.
But what about the scene with him and fucking Tom in the diner earlier in the episode, where he's like, oh, well, you could do this for me? And Tom's like, sure. Yeah, just to give him more shit. And he's just fucking him over. And it's just, it's sad.
Like, at what point is Greg going to realize that he is nothing but a pawn, right? Like, because the thing that I love so much about Greg in those first 2 seasons, right, is that he was constantly like having the nervous awkwardness, like be his shield, right? He was constantly in this push-pull back and forth. He never really knew what the hell was going on and kind of just went along with everything. But again, he seemed to have like some sense of like street smarts, right? He seemed to have like, again, just like a little bit of common sense. Like he kind of was able to like earn Logan's kind of trust and respect without even realizing it, right? The bond that he formed with Tom, kind of like the way that he like ingratiated himself with all of the different characters. And now it's like, so he's just everyone's whipping boy. And also he's now not, just kind of surface level, like inexperienced. Now he's just straight up dumb. He just seems to have learned nothing about his first 2 seasons experience with them. And now, not only is he more than likely going to be the patsy for somebody, right? But he's too stupid to even realize that it's coming, And I feel like if they were to pull out something, I feel like Greg getting saved by the grace of God, it would be like more irritating than Logan,
Yeah. I feel like Greg's not going to be saved this season.
Yeah. Which again, like if that is the conclusion that they want to pursue, then that makes logical sense, because Greg has just been all over the place, and really more so than anything else has no idea really what he's doing or what to do. So if that was the logical conclusion, I almost won't be able to accept, I feel like, any other conclusion if literally anything else happens to Greg other than him getting majorly fucked over in some capacity,
Like I said earlier, I think he's going to jail.
So you think that's happening?
I think that's I think it's going to happen one way or another. I don't care how it happens. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's had a clue at all what he's doing this season, and the writing for his character really hasn't amounted to much as of right now. Yeah. So,
where would you rank Greg within your favorite characters on Succession? Because I previously had him very, very high, and now after these last couple episodes, he's dropped a lot for me.
It's probably like 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's roughly around where I'd had
maybe
it. Like,
about that range.
it was like him and Logan like battling it out for like that 5 and 6 spot. But honestly, like I don't know, like it's just I'm not liking what they're doing with it. And Greg was somebody who again I regarded as one of my favorite characters. Like I love like kind of all of his little underdog moments and how he consistently seemed to be like operating really on his own plane of existence, but it always like kind of interlaced in like a surprisingly interesting way. And now it's like I don't know, they have no idea what they're doing with him. Let's talk about Connor and then let's wrap it up. Man, just talk about like Alan Ruck just achieving just and that Connor and that character just achieving just like full on like the machine has gained sentience because I don't think I've ever seen this in any other instance of an HBO show where you have the kind of the joke character that really is only there to like kind of provide some levity every once in a while and they don't really have like the most compelling or interesting arc, right? I never really understood kind of what they were doing with Connor after season 1. Season 1, it made sense. It's like, okay, so he's the black sheep. He's kind of the off child. He's the one that he doesn't have the same mom as Logan, as Kendall, Shiv, and Roman. He's kind of on the outset, but he also had similar experiences to them growing up, but he's also significantly older than them. And it provided this really interesting kind of perspective and viewpoint into Logan's relationship with the Chief 3 kids. And then season 2, you had his whole presidential campaign thing, which literally the writers treated like a joke. And nobody was taking that seriously. Even at the end of season 2, Logan was like, you got to stop this because it's embarrassing me and it's going nowhere. And now, in this episode, you have him bring it up, half joking. Like, I don't necessarily think that Connor even believes that he would actually be like a viable candidate. I think that he's just like so self-delusional. Also, the first instance that we see Willa since the first episode where Willa was promoted to main cast this season, Justin Lupe, and then she's not in any episodes. And the only instance that we see of her is her literally just ignoring Connor. She's like, okay, I got what I wanted from you. I got your money. So now I'm just going to focus on writing my play. And I don't know. Like,
I'm sick of that character, obviously.
What is going on in Connor's? And the fact that, like, is Logan seriously considering that for a minute? Or is he just doing one of his usual things where he's like, oh, let's weigh out all our options. And Logan is like the best liar on the show. So he's the only one that really can like make a lie seem like he's actually going to take it seriously when in reality he's not.
It was just kind of hilarious how close he came to getting that nomination, though. Like, it was really between him and Justin Kirk, and Yul Vasquez I didn't think was going to get it anyway, just because like Brian Cox I didn't think was ever going to do that. But like it was weird how close Connor came, and like everyone faking their like things for like why Connor should be president, and then at the end, this was Nick Braun's best part of the episode. Like, I do not think Connor should be president. Goodbye.
That was great. Although I did like the moment where he's kind of breaking down the logistics of how he's going to sue Greenpeace. That was insane, and that was actually really funny. Mostly because like Greg almost like half stumbles into like doing shitty things, but like he almost is like completely unaware, and that's kind of another problem that I have with Greg this season. It's like, okay, so now he is doing shitty things that he knows is shitty, but like he also like is still expected to be like kind of this clueless dope. Like I don't know. Like the more I talk about Greg, the more irritated I become as a character. Couple other quick things that I did want to bring up before we got out of here. So the reason of how Roman is able to push Logan towards supporting Mencken, Justin Kirk, is that his extreme views and nationalist rhetoric will expand their viewer demographics and get them the advertising revenue that Waystar needs to fend off big tech. I don't know. I think that might be grasping a little bit, right? Because if that's probably like the biggest instance where they're trying to like have the real world illusions, right? Because of obviously how much ratings time Trump got just in general when he was in office, right? Because of all the crazy shit that he said. But I don't know. Like that to me feels like another pipe dream. And then the other big thing, obviously, that we forgot to talk about too, was the thing that I think they're hyping up for like the big kind of like season finale event, which is the remarriage of their mother, Lady Caroline, right? Who we haven't seen at all this season. You know, she always pops up, right? And like I said, it's the only character that seems to be more colder and apathetical towards her kids than Logan is. And the whole big thing that's established here is that she's getting remarried, and the kids both are and are not making a big deal about it. I don't know. I feel like Roman is kind of freaking out and everyone is just like kind of going along with it. But like, it definitely felt like they harped on that a little bit too much, where it's like, especially because we know that they shot the finale in Rome and we know that the wedding's going to be in Tuscany. So I'm like, okay, so that's clear then the finale is going to be about around her wedding. You know, we got another Succession wedding. Who knows what's going to happen there?
Yeah, what do you think's going to happen in episode 8?
Oof, I don't know. Well, so here's my question to bounce off that. how many episodes do you think Skarsgård's in it for? Do you think he's only in it for the 1, or do you think they give him 2?
I hope he's in 2.
Yeah. Because the whole thing, right, is that Brody is in episode 5, but like he's CG'd into the crowd, right? So, and it's a quick blinker, you'll miss it. So, like,
yeah, I missed it.
I completely missed that. I didn't realize that Brody was even in the episode until I saw his name in the credits. But I could see them giving Skarsgård 2 episodes, right? I could see episode 8 being like the mix of them prepping for the wedding, figuring out whether Kendall's gonna be there, and also Roman continuing to deal with Skarsgård, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe like a fallout, right? Where maybe they meet Skarsgård at Kendall's birthday in episode 7, and then Roman tries to deal with him more in episode 8, and then whatever comes from episode 8, episode 9 is the wedding. That's kind of my take. That's my 2 cents as far as what could happen there. Because they're just hampering on it way too much. Like, way too much, for them to just like kind of completely have that be like a one-off moment, and that's still like the strangest nomination to me is Harriet Walter getting the guest actress nomination for season 2, when I personally think she way more so deserved it for season 1.
I agree.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, so real quick, because we're getting near the end of the season, so I wanted to start to break this down with you. Where do you think Emmys go this season, right? Because obviously, famously, we have like the sweep and kind of everyone last year, right? Strong, Cox, Snook, McFadden, Braun, Culkin, all nominated. James Cromwell nominated for guest actor. What do you think the nominations like? Do you think we see another sweep this year as opposed to last year? Because we know the Succession, which kind of virtually had no competition really that year, because it was the year after Game of Thrones and everyone had time to catch up on it during the pandemic. Like, do you see this like having another like sweep, or do you think that like they pull back? Do you think they give it more? I definitely think that they're going to run wild with the guest actor spots between Adrian Brody, Alexander Skarsgård, Hope Davis, Sanaa Lathan, Justin Kirk, all the people that they've had. I think they're going to run wild with the guest spots. But like, I don't personally see as many people getting nominated this year as they were for season 2. I don't know. That's just my take, though.
No, I think they will. I think this show is definitely in its prime right now, and people are really fucking with it, especially since after it won for, best drama for season 2. And I think, I'm not going to predict the winners right now, but I think Strong and Cox are in. I think Sarah Snook is in. I think J. Smith Cameron is in.
That would be awesome.
I think Matthew McFadden is in. I think Kieran Culkin is in. I also think we might get an Alan Ruck nom.
Yes, that would be awesome if Alan Ruck gets nominated. And then the question is also, do they pivot Snook into the lead category? Because I definitely feel like I thought it was a little bit confusing, because I definitely think she had a lot more of like a leading part in season 2 than supporting, right? I thought that was a little bit of category fraud, but I definitely think this season more so than last season, she should be in lead, not supporting. But I don't know. What do you think?
They might do that. I still think she's probably supporting, but that's just me. Yeah, I think if Nicholas Braun should get nominated for season 2, I think you can make an argument for Alan Ruck this season.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because I think this season, way more than the last, Alan Ruck deserves it more over Nicholas Braun. Like, Nicholas Braun is really the only, like, but I guess surprising nomination, because it's like, I don't know, him, like, that was just like, again, just the power of the show, where it's like, wow, I was only expecting Culkin to get nominated, right? I was surprised by the McFadden nomination. Then I'm like, wait, Nicholas Braun got nominated too? Okay, that's interesting. But yeah. But so that was it. That was our recap of Succession, season 3, episode 6, entitled What It Takes. I don't know, Dustin, what did it take ultimately?
It took 4.5 out of 5 for me. I still think this is one of the best episodes of the season. I think it was a little bit better than last week's episode, and I like that we got a lot of cool cameos. I like that it progressed the story more. I like that it teased the little thing with Kendall and Tom, maybe partnering up, maybe via Shiv, because Shiv feels betrayed by her dad. I just love all that writing. The performances were all on point as per usual, and it was a great episode. I loved it.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit lower. I'm going to go for another 4 out of 5 after last week's 4.5. I definitely think that I enjoyed last week's more, just because of like kind of the tension that was ratcheted up through the pure comedy of errors that was the shareholders meeting. But this was still another absolutely fantastic episode. As far as kind of pushing the plot forward, I definitely think this was probably the most important episode for that. Kind of like, again, just continuing to expand the influence and kind of continue to expand this world and see all the different facets that we get the Roys into. Like, what's it called? It gets an A+ from me, 4 out of 5 stars. And Dustin, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can get me on youtube.com/Mr. G Movie Reviews. You can get me on Letterboxd, Dustin Mason. You can get me on Twitter, Duster. And you can, check me out on MySpace. No, I'm kidding.
Bring back the MySpace. And of course, you can follow me at Movie Nerd Reviews on Facebook and Instagram. You can follow, of course, us on the Talkin TV social media feeds at Talkin TV Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Be sure to keep tuning in. We've got 3 episodes left somehow. We've watched 6 episodes of the show. Wild to me, ultimately. We've got 3 episodes left of our Succession recap. But stay tuned because this guy, Mr. G Movie Reviews, the Duster, Dustin Mason himself, this will not be the last time that you see him on this channel. We got a lot of things cooking for you on this channel is all that I'm going to say. There may be a certain one of our favorite filmmakers that we might be having a little bit of a discussion video about for his new movie that's coming out this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. Be sure to stay tuned. Follow Dustin with everything that's going on. Follow myself. Follow Chris with everything that's going on too. Chris hasn't been on in a minute, but he's still very much a part of the Talkin TV show. Follow him at Christian Evenko on all of the platforms. And of course, people be sure to click the subscribe button, click the like button, click the bell next to it. That way you guys get notified every time we put up new content. See you guys next week for episode 7, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. See you guys next time.